2014. And we have a few housekeeping items that we would like to announce. This meeting is being televised on Henry County TV Channel 14 and will be rebroadcast each Thursday at 7:30 p.m. A video of the meeting is also available on demand on the county website. Now would be a good time to check your cell phones and make sure they're turned on to silent or off so that you will not hear them ring during this telecast. If you wish to speak, you will need to fill out a public hearing card. We allot 10 minutes for those in favor of a case and 10 minutes for those in opposition of a case. For example, if 10 people wish to speak, they all share the 10-minute slot and so forth. And please address the board when you're coming up to the podium and not the audience when you come to speak. If you turn your back to us, we'll assume that you are finished and we'll ask you to be seated. At this time, we'll have the invocation and the pledge by Alton Head, so please stand.
Let's bow our heads. Heavenly Father, we thank you tonight for this occasion, this meeting. We ask that you would guide our hearts and our minds, that we will make the right decision based on your business and these public and these people. We ask all these blessings in your Son Jesus, we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Let's praise him. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. This meeting is now called to order. Okay, we have an agenda tonight, and I need to, the following items will be postponed on the agenda by staff and will not be heard tonight, and will be re-advertised to be heard at a later date. That's CU-14-03, CU-14-04, and ULDC-AM-1401, and the following will be removed from its entirety. Conditional use case number CU-14-02.
I make a motion to approve agenda as amended by Chairman Consiglio.
I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda as amended. All those in favor indicate by raising your hand. Motion carried. Thank you. This time, we need a motion to approve the minutes from the March 13th meeting, 2014.
Madam Chairman, I make a motion to approve.
Mr. Head makes a motion to approve the March 13th minutes. Do I have a second?
Second.
Have a second by Mr. Risher. All those, any discussion? All those in favor indicating by raising your hand. Okay, motion carried. We have one abstain by Mr. Bailey, who was not in attendance. Are there any staff comments?
Yes, good evening, Madam Chair. Just wanted to recognize two new staff members who have joined Henry County since our last meeting. This evening we will have Derek Sorensen, who is the Building Department Director, who will be presenting an item, and we will have Mr. Dante Gibbs, who's our Planning and Zoning Specialist, who will also be presenting an item. Again, I just wanted to welcome them to our Zoning Advisory Board meeting, and again, thank them for attending the meeting tonight.
Welcome, Derek and Dante. Thank you. We're now going to move to the agenda items. Okay, item number 1.
ULDC Amendment 1402, an ordinance by Henry County, Georgia to amend the Unified Land Development Code, Chapter 4, Site Design Standards, Section 40107, Design Standards for Single-Family Dwellings within the RA, R1, R2, R3, R4, and R5 zoning districts, Section 40201, Broomsmith Parkway Overlay District, regarding roof pitch, and Appendix A, Master List of acronyms and definitions for patio covers in accordance with Sections 12.0211 and 12.03.00 of the Henry County Unified Land Development Code. Derek Sorensen, Building Department Director, will be representing planning staff.
Good evening, Chairman and Board.
Good evening.
Patio covers are a common addition to homes and are typically engineered prefabricated assemblies or conventionally framed site-constructed structures. The roof pitch is often a function of where the patio cover intersects with existing construction. As shown below, illustration A represents a patio cover addition on a typical two-story home. Although the minimum 412 roof pitch is maintained as required by the ULDC, it is clearly incompatible with existing construction as it intersects with the second-story windows. I'll show this here. Illustration B represents, let's see if we can see this here. Illustration B represents the same condition with a 212 roof pitch, which is compatible with the existing construction. And the area here, you can see where it intersects with the windows with the steeper roof pitch. Staff recommends approval of the following 3 proposed modifications to the ULDC. 1, revise ULDC Chapter 4, Site Design Standards, Section 4.01.07, Design Standards for Single-Family Dwellings within the RA, R1, R2, R3, R4, and R5 zoning districts. Subsection B to read as follows. The minimum roof pitch shall be 412, with the exception of attached patio covers. The minimum roof pitch of an attached patio cover shall be as required by the current state minimum standard codes for construction as adopted by the Board of Community Affairs, along with their respective amendments. 2, revise ULDC Chapter 4, Site Design Standards, Section 4.0201, Bruton Smith Parkway Overlay District, subsection E.2.C.2, to read as follows. Roofs shall have a minimum of 512 pitch, with the exception of attached patio covers. The minimum roof pitch of an attached patio cover shall be as required by the current state minimum standard codes for construction, as adopted by the Board of Community Affairs, along with their respective amendments. Roofing materials for pitched and mansard roofs shall be limited to the following: metal standing seam, tile, slate, or stone, wood shake, architectural style asphalt shingles, shingles with a slate, tile, or metal appearance. And 3, revise ULDC Appendix A, master list of acronyms and by definitions, by adding the following definition after parking space off street and before pavement width. Patio cover, an attached structure with open, screened, or glazed walls, which is used only for recreational, outdoor living purposes associated with the dwelling unit and not as carports, garages, storage rooms, or habitable rooms.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions from the board, members for the staff? Okay, and Sherry, there's no applicant for this.
There is not, but we still have to open it up for public comments.
Okay, all right. I just want to make sure. Okay, we're gonna allow 10 minutes for comment. So can he be seated?
Yes.
I guess we can wait. Okay. So we don't have any more comments for you, so
Okay.
I think we're good. At this time, we're going to allow 10 minutes for those who want to speak in favor of this case. Please state your name and address for the record. Okay, go ahead. Do it one more time.
Can you hear it now?
Yeah.
All right. My name is Michael Laudette.
And your address?
Pardon me?
Your address?
402 Misty Ridge Way in Woodstock, Georgia. The reason I'm down here in Henry County is because I actually represent all 47 Home Depots in Metro Atlanta in building these type products. And so this actually became about with me applying for a permit here, and you guys had just adopted the ULDC codes. And so I've built so many structures down here that's the reason we're kind of looking at this.
Okay.
All right. A lot of times, and a further explanation I wanted to give on this is anytime that, I don't know if any of you have a deck here, but in Georgia it's very popular to have a deck in a second-story structure. And when you're building on a deck, it's impossible to have a 412 pitch because of your second-story windows. So you have to come off with 212 or 112 engineered, what's called modular roofing. And so all of our roofing actually is pre-engineered and meets all of the, passes all of the engineering and most of the time all the building codes for most municipalities. And so I just wanted to see if anybody had any questions for me, since I'm the one that really kind of heads up the building of these throughout Metro Atlanta. We build between 30 and 40 of these projects per month.
I think this is just a comment period. I don't think we ask questions of
Okay.
the public.
I've never attended one of these, so I
Yeah.
wasn't sure.
It's just a comment period.
And this is certainly a unique situation in that this individual actually specializes in what we're trying to get modified. So if there are any questions that Derek can't answer, certainly you all can ask those questions.
Since there's no applicant. Okay. Does anyone have any questions?
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks.
Does anyone else want to speak in favor of this case? I'll give everyone a chance. I don't see anyone coming up. All right, and so next we will have, we'll allow 10 minutes for those who want to speak in opposition of the case. Okay. So if I can have staff to come back up. Does anyone have any questions or comments from staff before we call the case? Okay, we will call the case.
ULDC Amendment 1402, an ordinance by Henry County, Georgia to amend the Unified Land Development Code, Chapter 4, Site Design Standards, Section 40107, Design Standards for Single-Family Dwellings within the RA, R1, R2, R3, R4, and R5 zoning districts. Section 40201, Broom-Smith Parkway Overlay District regarding roof pitch, and Appendix A, mastered list of acronyms and definitions for patio covers in accordance with Sections 12.0211 and 12.0300 of the Henry County Unified Land Development Code.
Madam Chairman, I move that the board approve staff's recommendation on the 3 proposed modifications to the ULDC regarding roof pitch and revision of the ULDC Appendix A regarding the master list of acronyms and definitions.
I have a motion by Mr. Babb. Do I have a second? I have a second by Mr. Head. Any discussion? All those in favor indicate by raising your hand. Any opposed? None opposed. Motion carried. All right. Thank you. All right. Case number 2.
Variance VR 1405, James M. and Mary D. Kramer of McDonough, Georgia, request a variance from development regulations for property located at 161 Oakland Road in land lot 178 of the 6th District. The request is to reduce the setback requirements, and the property is located in District 2. Dante Gibbs is representing planning staff.
Good evening, Chairman and board members. The applicant is requesting a variance from the 75-foot front yard setback requirements for the RA zoning district to approximately 22.8 feet from the property line along Oakland Road and approximately 35.6 feet from the property line along Nail Road. According to the Board of Assessors records, the property was constructed in 1943. Thus, the subject property predates the current Unified Land Development Code and is legally nonconforming. ULDC Section 110101C states that nonconforming uses are declared to be incompatible with permitted uses in the district where the nonconforming use is located. However, ULDC Section 110101D states that nothing in Section 110101 shall be construed to prevent the ordinary and routine maintenance and repair of nonconforming structures or structures with which contain conforming uses, provided that 1, repairs do not exceed 10% of the current replacement cost of the nonconforming portion of the structure during any period of 12 consecutive months, and 2, the cubic content of the structure is not increased. The purpose of this variance request is to allow the applicant to renovate his home. The renovations will include the entire interior, a privacy fence to the south side of the home, and a covered porch to the north side of the home. The footprint of the home will not change. According to the applicant, the renovation cost will exceed 10% of the current replacement cost of the nonconforming portion of the structure, which will require enforcement of current RA zoning district ULDC regulations. The enforcement of the front yard setback provisions in the ULDC for the RA zoning district will result in unnecessary hardship. In addition, the nonconforming front yard setbacks were further reduced by a Henry County initiated Sploss Road widening project along Oakland Road in 2009. This project acquired a strip of land for the purpose of a right-of-way and permanent easement according to the Henry County Splosh Department. This purchase was needed for the widening and paving of Oakland Road. Again, the enforcement of the current ULDC regulations for the RA zoning district will result in unnecessary hardship. According to ULDC Section 110201A, a variance may be granted where, owing to special conditions, a literal enforcement of the provisions of the ULDC will, in an individual case, result in unnecessary hardship. Therefore, planning staff recommends approval of the requested variance. At this time, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, do any of the board members have any questions for staff regarding this case? Alrighty. I don't think they have any questions. At this time, we would like the applicant to please come forward. Please state your name and address for the record.
Yes, Madam Chairperson. My name is James M. Kramer,
And your address.
161 Oakland Road, McDonough, Georgia.
Okay, do you have any comments you would like to add for what staff had said?
I could piecemeal this thing together over time. I'm on a transplant list, so I'm trying to get it all done so that if I don't get a transplant, my wife has a place to live. We're not looking to make any major changes to the property, just to fix the house so that it's safe and to code.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Did any of the board members have any comments for the applicant? Any questions? I don't think they have any, so you may be seated.
Thank you.
At this time, we're going to allow 10 minutes for those who want to speak in favor of the case. Okay, I don't see anyone coming up. So at this time, we're going to allow 10 minutes for those who want to speak in opposition of the case. Okay, I'm going to ask the applicant to come back up one more time.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Just give anybody else a chance to ask one more question or any comment. I don't think anybody has it. Just gives a chance for one last little comment. That's it. No comments.
No, not really.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. You may be seated. Okay, if we could call the case, please.
Variance VR 1405, James M. and Mary D. Kramer of McDonough, Georgia, request a variance from development regulations for property located at 161 Oakland Road in land lot 178 of the 6th District. The request is to reduce setback requirements, and the property is located in District 2.
Madam Chairman, I make a motion to approve the staff recommendation approval for the required variance.
I have a motion by Ms. Nesbitt. Do I hear a second?
A second.
I have a second by Mr. Nelson. Or is there any discussion? Okay, call for the vote. All those in favor? Motion carried. Thank you. Next case. And Sherry, I can't hear you.
RZ 1404S, TH41 LLC of Stockbridge, Georgia, requests a rezoning from RM2 Multiple Family Residence District Townhomes and C2 General Commercial District to RM1 Multiple Family Residence District Apartments for properties located on the north side of North Henry Boulevard, west of Shields Road, in land lots 59 and 70 of the 12th District. The property consists of 17.9 plus or minus acres, and the request is for a senior apartment development. The property is located in the city of Stockbridge, and Jeremy Gilbert is representing planning staff.
Good evening, Madam Chair and board members. The request that is before you tonight is a rezoning request for property that's located on the north side of North Henry Boulevard, west of Shields Road. The Property is currently zoned RM2 multifamily residential townhouses and C2 general commercial. The applicant is requesting to rezone the property to RM1 multifamily residential apartments. The portion of the property that is currently zoned C2 was rezoned by the Board of Commissioners on September 1st, 1966 with no zoning conditions, and the portion that is zoned RM2 was rezoned by the Stockbridge City Council on July 14th, 2003 from R2 to RM2 with 9 zoning conditions. There is also a development agreement that this property is bound by that staff has noted in the staff report that would need to be addressed by the City Council should this request be approved. The applicant is requesting to rezone this property for the purposes of a senior apartment complex consisting of 90 units on 17.91 acres, of which 12.91 are your net acres for development, resulting in 6.97 plus or minus acres. The proposed development as requested does not meet all of the minimum development regulations for the RM district that's outlined in the Stockbridge RM zoning ordinance. However, it does meet the intent of the RM1 zoning district for the city of Stockbridge. The requested rezoning for multifamily land uses is also not supported by the Stockbridge future land use map, which does designate the property for commercial and for medium density residential. The medium density residential land category designates the property for up to 2.0 to 3.6 dwelling units per acre, while the applicant's request is for 6.97. In reviewing this request based on the requirements of the Stockbridge City Code, as well as the comprehensive plan for the city of Stockbridge, planning staff does recommend denial as with its inconsistency with the future land use map and the RM zoning designation. However, staff does recommend 13 conditions should the board see fit to approve this request. 2 of those conditions are not listed in your staff report. There are 2 additional conditions that were proposed by the Henry County Department of Transportation, and those conditions are regarding acquiring the adequate strip of right-of-way to the existing drive that is there, and then the other is to make sure there's a cross-access easement agreement in place. Again, planning staff does recommend denial of this request, and I'll entertain any questions that the board may have.
Okay, do board members have any questions for staff at this time regarding this case? Do you have any questions? All righty. At this time, we'd like the applicant to please come forward. State your name and address for the record.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Alex Mitchum with Falcon Design, 235 Corporate Center Drive in Stockbridge. Like Jeremy said, staff's done a good job setting this up. Sometimes when you make these applications, it may not meet the letter of the ordinance, but the intent is there. And the future land use plan that was set forth is a 30-year plan. It was written some time ago. Directions change. You try to hit the mark. I'm a planner too. I've written plenty of these things. We try to forecast where things are going, but sometimes it's off a little bit. But in this case, if the surrounding area is a mixture of uses, you got C2, you have other apartments, different types of uses of that, and it backs up to Shields Road, but there's a 200-foot path in there or buffer in there that it will not access Shields Road. This is a DCA project, and if you've had any experience with those like we have, it's very tedious, and it's good that it's that way. It ensures that everything's above the board. It's about sustainability. It's about a project that will last. It's even down to the plant material that we use in the landscape islands, self-sustaining, not having to take a tremendous amount of water to maintain these things. So it's very intense. We go through several hours of meetings on these things where we go down a list of there's a binder it's about 2 inches thick that we go through and check off all these items to get credits to make sure that this meets the DCA requirements. This is also an ADA requirement to this thing, which this property sets up ideal for that. It has been developed in terms of putting infrastructure and the streets and all in, but no structures were ever built going vertical. So the site is padded. It's ready for us. And there's an opportunity here to build these 55 and older dwelling units that will not require them to go up and down stairs, or minimal, I should say, where you have as you pull in, as you park, you go straight into your door. There'll be a minimal number of 3-4 splits. So that's exciting. You don't too often find projects like this where it's set up for you pretty nice, but we think this one will score very, very well. I think a couple items also to add, the traffic will be reduced as opposed to a townhome project that was there. There's just no market for townhomes right now, not in this area. Also, the impact on schools. There's no school children typically accompanies this kind of project, 55 and older. Amenities package there will be very, very nice. I kind of laughed a little bit when I looked at the requirements. It said it requires a playground. I don't think there's going to be a playground here, but we'll meet the intent of the amenities package. But with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thanks.
You.
Do any of the board members have any questions for the applicant?
You said it would be 55 and older.
Yes, sir.
Would it be gated?
It can be gated. That's not a requirement of this type of use, but it can be. We're doing a project in Fairburn right now that it's not gated. It's actually right in their downtown. Pedestrian access is something that is one of the criteria, something that you can gain points from. So its location to, say, bus stops and other activities and such like that, you score points for those type of things. But it could be gated and done in a manner where it wouldn't limit us. We'd still gain the points for accessibility.
One of the reasons why I asked that question was because of where the location of it, where it's located.
Yes, sir.
With 55 and older citizens being there.
Yes, sir.
And
that could be obviously something we would look at and do that if we need to.
Does anyone else have any comments for the applicant?
Yes, what's the proposed number of units you plan to build there?
As this plan shows 90 units, so it's about 3.3 units over what the allowed density is right now.
Okay.
When you said earlier, you talked about the playground, the
Yes.
requirement for a playground. Would that be more like a green space and maybe walking area? Is that what you guys would do?
Exactly. Jeremy and I were discussing that earlier. The way the property is, there's an opportunity to do a nice greenway trail on the property, maybe a garden site. There's a lawn area for activities and such. Plus, the clubhouse that we propose is actually more than double what's required now. So we have space to do, several different things. And inside that clubhouse, we can do other amenities that would qualify as well.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have any questions or comments for the applicant?
how would the runoff be?
Whatever it would be put in the detention pond that we're required to design. The post and pre-development would have to meet the county's requirements for stormwater detention or BMPs, the best management practices. We'd have to meet those.
How do you propose the interest going into it?
We'll be coming off the North Henry Boulevard. Heard the comments about the conditions about what the DOT. We would abide by those, of course. There is a curb cut there now, and in fact, I think the traffic impacts onto North Henry would be less than they would be if there was a townhome. There's not as many trips per day generated from this, but it's whatever DOT deems fitting for this, we would abide by in terms of dedicating right of way. I know there's a little sliver in there that we've got to contend with. I don't see any major issues with that at all.
Any other questions or comments?
I have one question. In terms of DOT requests, have you discussed that with your staff in terms of
We've
meeting?
had some discussions, yes, sir,
Okay.
that we figured there would be some, early on in this project, when we kind of do our due diligence before we make applications, we've had some discussions and recognized there were some improvements that would need to be probably requested, and shouldn't be an issue. You know, again, and also the infrastructure that's in there, it's already laid, it's a good opportunity for us to reuse a lot of that infrastructure that's already there. And like I said, we looked at the entrance, the road that was put in. It sets up nicely where there's just minimal adjustments to be done there. We could still use it.
Okay.
Anyone else have any comments or questions for the applicant? Okay, you may be, I'm sorry.
When you said the gated community would be considered,
Yes, sir.
do you think that you could do this in this plan?
We could do this. It could be gated. I mean, like I said, there's the access point in there. It's like I said, we probably go in there and provide some turnaround areas or some pull-off areas that we do. We've done these before. The gates themselves would have to be constructed as a breakaway type gate, so emergency vehicles could access could gain full access in there. That's not uncommon. That would not be a big chore to do in this project. I said I use the word considered because my client's not standing here with me, so but I think that's something that's doable.
Would that, but if it's gated, I mean, I hear what he's saying, but if it's gated, wouldn't that be an inconvenience for someone to have to stop? I mean, is there enough room from the road to, because I'm not seeing, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
For like, if there's several cars that want to turn in, I wouldn't want anybody to be stalled there at the gate.
Correct. The
trying to get in.
Yeah, the stacking with that. And that's something we could look at is where the gate is located. Is it at the property line there, or is it closer to where the clubhouse is? Maybe the clubhouse needs to be reconfigured or turned a certain way so we can get the gate in there. Well, we'd work with DOT, so what distance, what kind of stacking would you need to make that work? We'd want to, if it would be fenced around the perimeter there anyway, just for security purposes. Yeah, it could be done. That absolutely could be. Because once you're in there, we want the security and the safety and the aesthetics.
Right, okay. Thank you. Anyone else have any questions or comments for the applicant? Okay, you may be seated.
Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to allow 10 minutes for those who want to speak in favor of this case. Okay, I don't see anyone coming up. All right, so now we're going to allow 10 minutes for those who want to speak in opposition of the case. Okay, if I can ask the applicant to please come back up. In case anyone else has any further questions for the applicant. Okay.
You mentioned that you have a security fence completely around the area. Is this a requirement of the?
It's not a requirement. Excuse me. It's not a requirement for of DCA. It is something it's not uncommon to do them. Again, the Fairburn project we're doing, there's no fencing around it because it's located in downtown. Right. I'm not certain about the Hampton project.
Yes, it is.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
And then so it's very similar. I think it's probably similar to that one,
right,
as opposed to the one that we're doing in Fairburn.
What type of fence?
I need to ask the question to staff then. Is this something we need to put in conditions if we want this, since it's not in there now?
What, as far as gating?
Gating and fence, security fence.
I mean, if it's a requirement that the board wants to do as far as the security fence, I don't know that I would go as far as conditioning them to a gate, because that would need to be addressed through, if the road becomes a public city road, it's going to be up to the city's public works department whether or not they would allow that to be blocked off for public access. It may would have to be a private drive at that point. So I mean, it's something they can consider and work with Stockbridge on. It may be something you could say that in the event, the applicant chooses to do is they coordinate with Stockbridge Public Works and Henry County DOT just to ensure those things are taken care of.
What type of fence are you guys planning to
It'd be a decorative fence. It would be something like the black aluminum, kind of the wrought iron look. That's typical on what we'd see in this. Something. It'd be a nice project. Now I think that would be something that would look good.
Okay.
We don't want to look like a stockade.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone else have any comments or questions for the applicant?
Question regarding the fencing. Because you all are a recommending body, if that is your desire, I would recommend that you do at least put that into the record so that the city council can know that that was a desire. Jeremy is absolutely correct in that the Public Works Department and the County DOT Department would certainly need to be involved. But if you don't list it as a condition of zoning, when it goes to the city of Stockbridge, we will not include it. So if you would like to see that as a condition, I would certainly recommend putting that in.
Okay, thank you, Sherry. I appreciate that. If there are no other further questions for the applicant may be seated.
Thank you very much.
So we can call the case?
RZ 1404S TH41 LLC of Stockbridge, Georgia, requests a rezoning from RM2 Multiple Family Residence District Townhomes and C2 General Commercial District to RM1 Multiple Family Residence District Apartments for properties located on the north side of North Henry Boulevard, west of Shields Road, in land lots 59 and 70 of the 12th District. The property consists of 17.9 plus or minus acres, and the request is for a senior apartment development. The property is located in the city of Stockbridge.
Okay.
I would like to make that we approve it based upon the 14 recommendation, and the 14 being that the security fence be a gated access, and that it also would be with the future land use map that be amended to attract the high density.
I have a motion for approval. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Richard, I have a second by Mr. Bailey. Okay. Mr. Bailey, have a second by Mr. Bailey. Any discussion? I have a question. Do we need to state condition 12 and 13 since it wasn't part of?
You can.
You can. It was what we presented in the overhead tonight. We did the 12 and 13 in the overhead.
Okay, so we don't need to add that to it.
I mean, we can. I mean, we can state them in, but I mean, I entered them into the record when we did it tonight.
So we can just approve it as stated. Okay. Okay, all those in, any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor? None denied. Okay, motion carried. Thank you. Okay, and case number 4.
RZ 1405, Davis Brothers Incorporated of McDonough, Georgia, requests a rezoning from RA Residential Agricultural to C3 Highway Commercial for property located on the north side of Jonesboro Road, east of Foster Drive, in land lot 112 of the 6th District. The property consists of 4.04 plus or minus acres, and the request is for a commercial development. The property is located in District 3, and Jeremy Gilbert is representing planning staff.
Good evening again, Madam Chair and board members. The applicant is requesting to rezone a portion of a larger tract of land, which will consist of 4.04 plus or minus acres, from RA to C3 Highway Commercial for a future commercial development. At this time, the remaining 13.29 plus or minus acres would remain zoned RA Residential Agricultural. According to the applicant's conceptual site plan, they are proposing to divide the 4.04 plus or minus acres into 3 separate outparcels and a dedicated roadway. This property is located, as illustrated on the future land use map, within an activity center. It's located within the Henry Town Center Suburban Employment Center. That Suburban Employment Center consists of approximately 2,400 plus or minus acres, of which 1,200 of those acres would need to be non-residential to meet the 50% guideline based on the typology for that type. Currently, there's approximately 700 plus or minus acres currently zoned for non-residential, therefore resulting in a need for approximately 500 more acres of non-residential land uses. The request is consistent with the future land use map. As you can see, the underlying designation for the property is a commercial designation. However, the surrounding area of the property on the north side of Jonesboro Road consists more of C2 uses, and on the south side of Jonesboro Road is where it consists more of your C3 zoning. Planning staff did review this request, and based on the applicant's request and the surrounding areas, planning staff does recommend denial of the C3, but does recommend approval of C2, general commercial, with 5 staff conditions that are in your packet, as well as adding a condition from DOT that would state the applicant is to coordinate the site design with Henry County DOT to allow for a possible future roadway between Jonesboro Road and Foster Drive. Also wanted to enter into the record that we did receive correspondence from the applicant, and I'll let him speak more to that when the applicant comes up, but he did present 2 additional conditions restricting some uses from C1, C2, and C3, should it be the desire of the board to go with a C3 designation. I answer any questions that the board has.
Does anyone have any questions for staff at this time? I have a question about proposed condition number 3, the undisturbed landscape buffer, and then additional vegetation. So that additional vegetation, would that be in front to act as a buffer? Is that what the canopy tree, evergreen tree, understory tree?
That's only if it's determined that the existing buffer is not adequate. If the existing vegetation that is there is a good natural buffer, we don't want them to take any trees down to then have to plant new ones. But during the plan review stage, if it's determined that the existing vegetation is not adequate, this allows for a particular specimen of trees and quantity of trees to be placed to enhance the existing natural buffer.
So there's a buffer there now?
Well, the ordinance requires one. Right now the site is a wooded site. So if once they clear out the site for where they're going to develop, if the buffer that is required, what has remained, would deem to be adequate, then they wouldn't have to plant any additional trees. This is only in the event that they get out there and there's nothing but some pine trees that don't provide good screening, then this would put in place some additional screening.
Okay, does anyone else have any questions for staff? All right, thank you, Jeremy. At this time, we'd like for the applicant to please come forward. Oh, and before the applicant comes forward, so you presented 5 conditions, so the applicant will present the other 2 conditions, is that what you're stating?
Yes, we actually presented 5 in the staff report and then had 1 additional from DOT that if the board so desires, the applicant's request shows condition 6 and 7, so that would be condition 8 if the board chose to add the conditions that are being recommended by the applicant.
Did you read the condition from the DOT?
I did.
Okay. I must have been sleeping while you did that. I didn't hear that. Sorry. And so that would be condition 6 or 8?
Depending on how the board decided to vote on it, if it was the board's desire to go with what the applicant's going to present, that their proposed 2 conditions are, it would be staff's recommendation to do that as condition number 8.
Okay.
If you choose not to add those, then it would then fall into condition number 6.
Okay. Thank you, Jeremy. Okay, applicant, please come forward. State your name and address for the record.
Yes, ma'am. My name is Andy Welch. I work at Smith, Welch, Webb & White, and our address is 2200 Keiths Ferry Court in McDonough. I represent Mr. John Davis and Davis Brothers. Mr. Davis could not be here tonight. He is actually attending his son's graduation, which is in Texas, so we're happy for him and excited for that ceremony. But he would otherwise have been here, and he sends his apologies. The request is fairly straightforward. It is just a C3 request, and as you can see from your future land use map, this is consistent with the future land use plan. It's consistent with the nodal development that's contemplated around the I-75 corridor, Jonesboro Road. This property is adjacent to two properties already zoned C2. It is across the street, directly across the street from several parcels that are all zoned C3. The conditions on all these other parcels are very nominal and standard. The conditions that are proposed by staff for a C2 zoning and presumably for a C3 zoning, if you were to grant the request, are also consistent with other zoning classifications. I wish to point out that in our discussions with staff members, we had identified certain, just an idea, a characteristic that was sought by the planning staff with respect to this particular area. I was talking to Mr. Bailey before we came in this evening, and this board has looked at pawn shops and loan offices that are associated with gold and precious metals and those kinds of things as not being consistent with the kind of higher end retail that this commercial node already displays and exists. You have a very good, well-established C3 retail, heavy retail area on the northwest corner of this particular intersection, and then you have lots of properties owned C3 on the south side of the road, directly across from this property. So what we did was, we thinking about what that character of that area is already. We didn't want to include uses that would diminish the property values, diminish the retail nature, and the higher end nature of that particular interchange. Also, you have a very beautiful 4-lane road coming in from Jonesboro Road into the city of McDonough. That has qualities and characteristics that I think need to be preserved going forward for my generation, for future generations, so that you have a high quality entrance into the city of McDonough, into our county. That being said, we then went through the list of all the uses that are allowed in a C3 zoning, but C3, as you know, includes the uses of C2 and C1. So the list is quite long. So we actually went through the list, and I'm sure the board's aware there are 68 uses for C1. There are another 20 uses for C2, 5 conditional uses in C2, and then 18 in C3. So you're getting to close to 100 uses that you can contemplate, over 100 uses right there. So what we did is we went through the list of all those different uses and said, what should we remove from this as permitted uses so they would be excluded, they wouldn't be allowed going forward. And the applicant, myself and members of staff went through that list, and we marked off those that should not be there. Within the C3 permitted uses, we found 8 uses that we think should be excluded. One of those uses in a C1 zoning classification is loan offices. So if you zone it C2, just straight C2, loan offices are allowed. In addition, we've removed portable and mobile restaurants, cemeteries, road, ground passengers, transit transportation, postal and courier messenger services, which really requires a lot larger piece of property than the 4 acres we're talking about. Trains and other rail movement devices. Again, this property is not really geared for that. Golfing, driving ranges, laundromats, loan offices. And out of the list, the letter that I presented to that you have in your packets has listed as condition 6, all of these uses would be excluded. Those are 6A through H on your handout that you should have received. In addition, items 6I through O are all C2 uses. And so the C2 uses that would be permitted if you accept the staff's recommendation, that would include an auction gallery, gun sales and pawn shops, service buildings and dwellings, radio and television stations, taxi offices, crematories, and fairs and exhibitions. So we've taken those out in our proposal to you. Out of the C3 uses, we've narrowed it down to what we think are essentially the same type of uses that are contemplated around this kind of interchange, around I-75. And what we did was we struck, out of those uses, we struck 12 out of the 17 permitted uses. and left only hotels, heavy consumer goods sales and services like a Target. Obviously, the property's not that big for it, but you could have a larger, with the 4 acres, you could have something that used the entire 4 acres. Automotive services, major automotive services are right by the interstate. That makes sense. Feed and seed stores, you don't see them as often anymore, but we have a Home Depot, but there may be also a kind of an Ace Hardware, a smaller unit that might be desirable. And remember, I mean, we all live here. We know how much a barrier I-75 is on our eastern and western portions of our county. I mean, I dare say that Mr. Bailey wants to drive across to get into McDonough all the time. I know that lots of folks may not want to drive across the interstate to get to the other side as well, just because of the traffic. It's just a traffic-driven a phenomenon. So what we see is that it may be possible that a smaller hardware store, feed and seed, may want to be on the eastern side. Trade shops, electrical, plumbing, gutter machines, and HVACs, we've included that. That's consistent with the kinds of zoning that's right across. There's a slight industrial type park that's zone C3 that would allow for that as well across the street. So those are the uses that we seek to possibly use on the 4 acres out of the C3 that we'd like to retain. The rest of those uses, 12 of them, we've asked in our list just to be excluded. We don't have any desire to place it on the property. The property is not conducive for those uses. We don't think that they fit the character that we're talking about for this particular interchange. So those uses that we are excluding are listed as 6P through the end, through AA. And so those would be the uses that we would ask to exclude from C3. In addition, staff has asked us to make sure that we try to make clear to anyone that uses the property, leases the property, or buys it subsequently, that they are put on notice that all the uses I just talked about being excluded will be excluded going forward. So when they buy it knowingly. And so we've added condition 7 in what I provided you, and that says that the property owner shall inform future tenants or successors in interest that the uses listed under paragraph 6 are prohibited. We're trying to be very transparent in the future use. But I think the overall point here is what we've done is we were asking for a C3 use. We're trying to tailor that C3 use to something that is consistent with the character and eliminate uses that otherwise would be allowed under C2 or C1 that we generally don't think would be good for that particular location. And probably not consistent with the character that we've already established there. So with that said, I would ask that you recommend to the Board of Commissioners a favorable consideration of the C3 zoning recommendation with the conditions that staff has recommended 1 through 5, with the additions of 6 and 7, which I've provided to you. And then we've also talked with staff about what I'll call condition 8, which would be the DOT transportation condition, which Mr. Gilbert has read. And we think that would be acceptable and prudent given the need to do something with respect to that curve in Foster Road. And we'd like to cooperate with that to the best of our abilities. So, Madam Chair and members of the Zoning Advisory Board, it's indeed a pleasure and honor to be before you, and I hope that we'll have your favorable consideration this evening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Welch. Does any of the board members have any questions or comments for the applicant?
I have one. Mr. Welch, what's the proposed usage of that property as of now?
We have currently a contract with Bojangles Restaurant, and for one of there are 3 on your site plan. You have 3 parcels, and we've just divided that up to show how we anticipate using that. And one of those, we know we have a contract for Bojangles to go at one of those locations. That's all that we have at this time.
And that's just one of the. You're divided into 3, and you're just using it for one of them, correct?
Yes, sir. The site plan shows it divided into 3 1-acre plus parcels, and Jeremy will show it to you here. And you'll see from the way the curve cut is made, or the median cut is made here, we may need to do some alignment here, make sure the alignment's good with Bridges Road, and I've talked to David Simmons about that. But outside of that, we do have a contract on this area here for that potential restaurant.
Okay.
The other two parcels, we do not have an end user yet.
That proposed street, is that what's going to go around to, is it Foster?
It could potentially. The recommendation for the condition is that they just coordinate with the Department of Transportation to see if there is a feasibility to even be able to consider that. But it would, in essence, line up to where it's shown that street is.
My concern would be it'd create a cut-through. Is that what the vision would be of the DOT?
In that area, we previously have looked very, I guess, on the surface, conceptually. I think I'd drawn some up 5 years ago, some possible alignment stuff, and more than likely a possible realignment of Foster, where you go from Foster back to Foster to try and smooth some of that alignment out. But we also thought it's possible that you could have a connection between Foster down to Jonesboro at North Bridges, but that would provide potentially a little bit of a north-south connector, that would reach back down really south of 2081 if we could get Bridges back in place.
Okay, just didn't know if you had like a future proposal.
I don't have anything concrete, and like I say, I would lean towards, my best guess would probably do some work with Foster. The Georgia DOT Managed Lanes project, where they're going to do the managed lanes in the center of the interstate. They will have an access out to the center of the interstate immediately south of Foster. It'll basically be a bridge that goes out to the center of the interstate to where you can get on and off the managed lanes. So you conceivably could have some more traffic on Foster for folks that want to get on the managed lanes. Plus, Foster just gets you to Jonesboro right near the ramps anyway, so you already have that traffic pattern in place.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else have any comments for the applicant?
I'm looking at what it says, exterior of the building, and since that's a gateway into the city, it shall be constructed of brick, stuff coat, and stone and glass, and the combination thereof. What, if any, could we put in there that building would have to be brick?
Well, what we'd run into is I think a problem of most of your restaurants and pretty much any of your major national chain automotive restaurants, even hoteliers, mix these elements. So they generally have a mixture of them. Even many of the buildings, is the city of McDonough has done a very outstanding job of trying to produce a quality and atmosphere, and a lot of that has to do with a brick stucco combination. And if you look at the Holiday Inn and the Express and the Chick-fil-A that's down at Highway 20 and the interstate, you'll see that kind of theme. And I think, from my experience with staff has been that they have tried to encourage the end user to match up the architecture with the surrounding area. And I believe we did this once other. We had some language that we did include to try and ask the future user to mirror other uses. Now, if you do that, you have to bear in mind that LA Fitness is a stucco facade building, so you already have that kind of, the character on this side of the building is more of a stucco facade. So by having these uses or these materials, you're actually giving greater flexibility to the landowner to mix and match. And I would just suggest that rather than placing one limited condition on these three little outlots on a large section of road, that maybe the planning and the zoning advisory board ought to look at some kind of architectural standards for the corridor itself, for Jonesboro as well, so that you have some set of standards that everybody understands, knows going in, and that the zoning isn't done on a small lot per lot basis. and that may give you more consistency. But that's, it's entirely up to you, but we did do a zoning before I had before you a few months ago where we talked about trying to make that one particular lot conform to another particular building in that same intersection. So I'm open to that, but certainly the way this is designed, it certainly suits our needs.
There's a gas station there on the corner, and is that brick or what is that made of?
It's a mix of brick and then some metal sidings. The Quick Trip is a mixture of brick, stucco, and glass, and some. I think it's some metal on the roof.
Right.
Roofing is.
And that movie theater, is that stucco or?
Yes, it's all ethos.
Yeah.
Remember, it's that maroon. Well, anyway.
Yeah.
Get your attention.
That might be something we could look into for that whole area, just kind of get a vision of what we want. Alton, just, for, like you said, it's going into McDonough and historic McDonough and how we want that corridor to look. But like he said, not just individual lots, but the whole area, how we want it to look.
Even Davis Brothers, the restaurant and hotel that's on 20, growing up where I used to go to have Sunday lunch with my granddad, that's got that metal rounded feature to it, but a lot of it's brick. My saying that is that I think John Davis would be cognizant of the appearance of the buildings, given his history here.
Anyone else have any comments or questions for applicant? Okay, thank you, Mr. Welch. You may be seated.
Thank you.
At this time, we're going to have public comment. We're going to allow 10 minutes for those who want to speak in favor of the case. If you'll just wait till you get up to the microphone, and then you can state your name and address, and then you can address the board at that time. And if you're going to speak in favor of the case. You're not going to speak in favor of the case.
I really don't know which one I want to ask him questions, really.
Okay, Sherry, that's allowed. Okay, sir.
Okay, my name is Elton Alexander. I live at 920 Maple Leaf Drive, McDonough, Georgia.
Okay.
Okay, and I guess what I wanted to actually know was, and really not what's related to this case, but do I get a chance to address the board, or do I have to come up during public comment like this, first of all?
At the end of, if you're not addressing this particular case,
right.
At the end, we're going to allow public comment at the very end, so you can do it at that time if you're not going to speak on this particular case. So right now, we're hearing this particular case only.
Okay, that'll be fine.
Okay, thank you. So are there any that want to speak in opposition of the case? Okay, Mr. Welch, if you'll come back up to the podium. I just wanted to ask one other question. So I like a lot of trees. I like a lot of green space, and I like things to be kind of shielded a little bit. And, I have natural preserve and things like that. And I know that a lot of restaurants, it's like they go in and it's a parking lot and it's the restaurant, to accommodate folks coming in and out. Could we have a vision there of the aesthetics of what Mr. Head was talking about? Just, the natural beauty of, going down Jonesboro Road and the trees and that sort of thing. I see, Jeremy said there would be a buffer, but, if there's pine trees, is this not all going to be clear cut? Who's in charge of making sure that, you don't go in and just mow all the trees down? And
I think that the staff probably can answer a little bit better than I can on this one, but I can tell you that my recollection is that the ULDC has a tree ordinance built into it, and so that does govern some of this to an extent. But I don't remember what the minimum triggers on that are. So, but I think that, to be honest with everyone here, this property it has a dramatic slope into the creek there. I think it's Criddle Creek. So it has a slope. So to be quite honest, what I think is going to really happen is you're going to have some leveling that goes on in this site. That the site where the Bojangles is going to be cut back and leveled out. And then what I think should happen is that there should be a landscaping plan put in place to ensure that the frontage along Jonesboro Road matches up with the nice trees that have been planted by the city and the county along the right of way, so that you maintain that sense of a tree covered corridor coming into the city. I don't know to what extent the ordinances currently force and require property owners to do that. So I think that's where the staff could probably help us.
Jeremy?
Yeah, I can.
I know, but
Based on what the Unified Land Development Code is the ordinance does require 12% of the site to be landscaped. And it also has provisions as far as along your frontage and your side yard setbacks, front yard setbacks. You have to have so many trees per the linear footage of the frontage of the site. You have to have so many trees for every 25 feet in the front. You have to have so many trees for every 50 feet on the sides. So there are provisions in place for that, as well as the ordinance does require that there's a 10-foot landscape strip around all parking areas that are adjacent to roadways. So if there's parking that is going to be close to the parking would be in front of the building, close to Jonesboro Road, there would be a 10-foot landscape strip that is required along that roadway there. So the ordinance does have the provision that would add some landscaping, at least at so many trees per the number of linear feet of frontage.
I mean, I guess I'm looking on the other side of the interstate and, with all the restaurants, and, I mean, you don't really see the trees if they're there. That's not what I notice as much as I notice the buildings. And I guess on that other side, since it's going into McDonough, it would be nice to have more tree coverage, I would think, instead of just, your typical one or two little bushes that are sticking out, or, a strip of grass. And that's just why I was asking that question. Is there any way that we can make it a little bit more aesthetic as far as, tree coverage there?
I mean, definitely the board has the right, if it's their desire, to impose a condition that would require enhancing the landscape, above what the Unified Land Development Code would require. Again, the requirement for every linear foot and all of the frontage requires trees, not just shrub. I mean, there's specific elements. It requires a tree, a shrub, and so many different things for every particular linear footage. But if it's something that it's the board's desire for it to be enhanced beyond that, it's something that could be done in way of a condition.
So that number 3, where you say 1 canopy tree, 1 evergreen tree, 1 understory tree, and 5 shrubs, that's not a condition?
No,
what is that?
That's in reference solely to the actual buffer. The ordinance requires a buffer between any property that's zoned residential and property that's zoned commercial. Since there is property that's remaining to the north of this site that's going to remain RA, there's required to be a 40-foot buffer there. That condition is saying between the residential land uses and the commercial land uses that a buffer be provided. There's actually not a condition listed for landscaping because the code has the requirement for what the landscaping requirements are. One could be added to enhance that, but there is not a condition listed now for landscaping.
What do since I don't know what that code says, does anyone have that? I mean, I know there's a landscaping code, but I just know that some of the stuff that goes up, and there's supposed to be landscaping in front, and you've got these 3 dying trees and 3 dying shrubs, and, it just looks pathetic, and, it's supposed to be where it covers, and it's supposed to be aesthetically to the community, and, in the center, and it's not, and I just,
And I can tell you that the Unified Land Development Code does not have a provision in it that is a screening provision that would screen a retail use from a right-of-way. There's nothing in there for a screening. It's more of just the aesthetics aspect of it, requiring a certain number of small trees, medium trees, large trees in those particular areas, but it doesn't have anything that would be more of a, from what I'm understanding, you're to say is more of a shielding buffer or shielding landscaping versus just a smaller landscape detail.
I'm not really concerned about the shielding as much as I'm concerned about aesthetics and just keeping that natural, like you're saying, the trees are along the Jonesboro Road corridor, just, making it look like it's not just so commercial that it's, aesthetically pleasing to the eye. Like when you go to Hilton Head, when you drive down those 4 lanes, you don't see the buildings, you see the landscape and the beauty of that. I mean, I don't know that we could start changing this, like you said, one little parcel at a time, but I'm just wondering right there on Jonesboro Road if there's anything that we could add to it. I don't want to belabor all night long about, putting shrubs up, but I just hate seeing the clear cut and then, it's just nothing but a parking lot and that's all you see.
Well, the landscapers are going to love you.
And I don't have any access to any landscapers.
The great thing, one unique quality about Jonesboro Road that's not on any other corridor that I'm aware of in Henry is that the county and city have already cooperated and done the tree plan throughout. So in the right of way, which is the public's domain, and we have the applicant wouldn't have any responsibility or couldn't cut those trees down. Obviously, you've already established a corridor so that, and by the time this develops out, a lot of those trees will be fairly large in size. So that's fairly unique, and I think that actually, as those trees grow up, you'll maintain that sense because they're in the right of way, and that's the first thing your eye is going to catch as you look. And they're not as big now as we'd like them to be, but they will be in 10 to 15 years. I think and in all honesty, that would be nice to be looking at that for Eagles Landing Parkway and extending that trajectory out as you move east in the county, and those are things that are really, I think, accomplish what you're saying without having to get into every parcel. You can do that just in the right of way along the corridor. Anyway, that's just an observation, and that might be of some help.
And if I could add to that also, if you'll notice in the pictures that are here, they're in your packet. The trees that Mr. Welch is talking about are the ones that are here. They're already planted in the right-of-way, so those trees would be in addition to what they would be required to plant as far as the landscaping. Those are the ones that are in place. So those are some pictures to kind of illustrate that for you.
Okay. All right. Thank you so very much. I appreciate that.
I don't know if you have this, but Ms. Sherry, y'all may have this in your tree ordinance, but I know that something that the city of Locust Grove did was they, in their tree ordinance, they have some assessments that go along with cutting down large trees, and sometimes that's necessary. And if you do that, there's a compensation for that. And when you do it, what the city did was actually took some of that compensation money and then screened out the railroad track and planted these trees and shrubbery in the right of way to give that feel as you come down the city of Locust Grove. And that may be a source of way to offset the cost of maybe doing some kind of arbor initiative through the right of ways of the city on the county on these major roads. Just a suggestion.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a question I want to ask Sherry.
Okay. If there are no further questions for the applicant, you may be seated. And before we call the case, we have a question for staff.
Yes, I have a question for our director. Inasmuch that in the comprehensive land use plan that this area or this property is located within an employment center activity area, can staff look at this activity area, which is I think several thousand acres, and look at the landscaping that's already been done recently, and perhaps come up with some guidelines that could be used for other future properties that would be developed within the activity center area.
Absolutely, and certainly I hear loud and clear, especially from the comments made by Mr. Head, Chairwoman Consiglio, and yourself. I do know that some time back, the city of McDonough was looking to create an overlay district for Jonesboro Road. And what I will do is make it my business to get with their community development director and see where that overlay district stands. If the city is looking to move forward with that, we certainly will look at what they're recommending and make sure that we incorporate some landscaping requirements. But you're absolutely correct, because it is a part of an existing activity center. We can certainly not look at master planning the entire activity center, but certainly coming up with some guidelines, maybe not just for Jonesboro Road, but maybe for all of our corridors, like Eagles Landing, Jonesboro Road, definitely Jodico Road, once the the bridge is completed. So certainly, we can look at that, and we'll bring something back to you all in the form of an amendment to our Unified Land Development Code.
Okay, I think that's fine.
Sure, because what I hear from everyone is they moved to Henry County because it was country. It's the country atmosphere. And obviously, we don't want to stifle growth, and we're proud of all of our businesses that are here in Henry County. We want, obviously, business here. We want to keep it aesthetically beautiful with trees and green space and things like that. And I think going in the future, that's something that would behoove us to look into, and so that it's all just not clear cut and concrete and stucco and brick. It's that it is aesthetically pleasing to the eye, and the corridors are like the trees and landscape, and that it looks rich and lush and things like that. And I think that would help property values also. But I just appreciate everyone's cooperation in that and helping us kind of see that vision for our county. I think
Absolutely.
That would be great.
And not to put Mr. Nelson on the spot, but he is actually serving as a steering committee on an overlay that we're doing for the Fairview corridor or Fairview Road area. And that was some of the concerns that we heard from the steering committee. We have a new road that's being widened, and we want to make sure that we're not discouraging businesses, but we also want to make it aesthetically pleasing so that when people come in, they understand we want to take care of our community. There were a lot of good recommendations that came out of that overlay district, but most particularly as it pertained to landscaping. And we went through a very long process, a charrette, where we actually looked at landscaping from all over, and for this group to decide, what would fit for this area. So I don't know if Mr. Nelson wants to speak on it, because I know I'm putting you on the spot, but certainly that is something that we have readily available, and we will be taking to our board for adoption next month.
You're absolutely correct, Sherry, and that you heard it from the community, and that's what they are looking for. So, we want to uphold that.
That's good. Thank you, guys. We appreciate that. Okay, if we could call the case.
RZ 1405, Davis Brothers Incorporated of McDonough, Georgia, requests a rezoning from RA Residential Agricultural to C3 Highway Commercial for property located on the north side of Jonesboro Road, east of Foster Drive, in land lot 112 of the 6th District. The property consists of 4.04 plus or minus acres, and the request is for a commercial development. The property is located in District 3.
I would like to make a motion to approve a rezoning from RA to C3 Highway Commercial with 8 conditions. The first 5 being those that are listed in the staff report. And condition 6 is the list previously recounted of uses that would be excluded, which are in C1, C2, and C3 zoning districts from the property. Also, condition 7, where the property owner shall inform future tenants or future owners that the uses listed under condition 6 are prohibited. And then finally, condition 8, based on the recommendation of the Henry County Department of Transportation, that the applicant would coordinate site design with the Henry County DOT to allow for a possible future roadway between Jonesboro Road and Foster Drive.
Have a motion for approval of a C3. Do I have a second?
Second.
Have a second by Mr. Babb. Any discussion? All those in favor indicate by raising your hand. Motion carried. Thank you. Okay, at this time, that is all of the cases we will hear tonight. We will allow 10 minutes for public comment. So anyone that wants to make a public comment, please come forward and state your name and address for the record and your comment, and you'll have 10 minutes.
Thank you, Board. My name is Elton Alexander. I reside at 920 Maple Leaf Drive, McDonough, Georgia, in the Winslow at Eagles Landing subdivision. And I come here tonight as a representative of Because We Care, Henry County, Atlanta South. We are a group of like-minded residents who desire quality development in our community. There has been a lot of concern expressed about some of the developments lately, such as the liquor store going in at the corner on Hudson Bridge Road next to the QT, and the Cheddar's going, and the Auto Zone going next to Cheddar's. You know, as a group, much concern and much debate was discussed on how that was allowed to happen or what we could do to prevent that from happening in the future. Because we have far too many fast food restaurants along those corridors, and what we can do to encourage. And we come here tonight to say we need to raise the bar, and we need to be in a position where we're more patient. And the future land use map that was created is the roadway. And we're challenged as this board as the gatekeeper. And some of us feel like the gate has been opened liberally and not as tight as it should have been in some cases. You'll have to excuse me. The perception in the past expressed by a lot of the group members has been that Henry County was only interested in collecting building permits and throwing up strip malls here and there, and not really turning down a lot. Again, patience should be what we're looking for here, and the gate should be, and the bar should be high. When somebody comes in here before you, we believe that if there isn't a compelling reason to go against the future use map, then the gate should be closed. And if the compelling reason does not serve the greater good, the future use map is our roadway to the quality development that we deserve as a community. We can't get there if we keep constantly lowering the bar. Group members constantly, such as myself, drive into well-established communities on the north side, thinking Smyrna, Georgia. I remember years ago, Smyrna, Georgia was just, when I moved to Atlanta, was a place on Atlanta Road where nobody wanted to be, filled with poverty. But at some point, when Mayor Bacon decided to change the city square there and put up the buildings there and had a vision, they believed. Some of us don't believe that we can be a Smyrna or a Marietta or a Dunwoody or a Sandy Springs. We have to dream big in order to be big. We have to have that vision, because many of people like myself have been in the community for a long time, and we're growing increasingly frustrated with not seeing the types of developments that we think that we deserve. The county is losing millions of dollars with persons like myself driving to Atlanta, downtown to Atlantic Station, or to Lenox, or over to Cumberland, when we should have that right here in our own community. And at some point, those businesses take a note of what they see in the community. You know, I just emailed the commissioners just over the weekend about the maintenance, and I applaud you for all your all the conversation that you've had about aesthetics and maintaining the corridor. Because if I'm a business and I'm looking to locate, and I come and I see that they're not maintaining the properties and that the aesthetics aren't good, and I have a quality establishment that I'm getting ready to put down millions to put in that corridor, I'm going somewhere else. It's just as simple as that. Excuse me. And as I said, you know, as we drive into town, and, you know, when I go to Smyrna and I see this grand place versus where it used to be, I see us. I moved down here 10 years ago because I saw this as a coming place that we could be, that's where we could be if we did it correct. You know, we say a lot of things about the north side versus the south side, but, you know, there's one thing, and they have high standards. And I'm not saying that these members of the board don't have high standards, but those standards are brought into question when we see we got one liquor store on the end of 138, a huge complex already, and we look down on the other end, man, we got another liquor store? Where's the fine dining? Where's the upscale establishment that we deserve? Today on our site, I spoke with Jay Baker at South Point, and he gave us some breaking news that we're getting a Chipotle down there, we're getting a Five Guys down there, and the Movie Tavern is also coming down to that particular location. So there's some quality development going into the areas, and we got to make sure that, and they refer to their development as a north side type development. There's a difference there. We see it. And that's what we want. That should be the goal of what we're looking for, is that particular type of development. Anything less than that, we don't need it anymore. We already got too much of it. We do. And the only way to stop that is that it has to start right here. I'm disappointed that there aren't more citizens here speaking to what I'm talking about, because we talk about it every day, about what we want to see. Many of us we have so much hope for that Jodico corridor coming up, which is, we were disappointed when the potential mall project didn't go through fruition. Because again, those dollars that we're spending going to downtown Atlanta, going up to Lenox, to Cumberland, out to Gwinnett, could be spent right here. We have all these budgetary issues, and I hear candidates all the time talk about being good stewards of the public's money and not spending money. But you can't, you have to invest, and you have to have high standards in order to turn the tide around. In speaking with Jay today, he spoke on a lot of the issues around attracting that type of business to the area. He gave a breakdown on the 5 mile and the 10 mile radius, and it really takes, a computer these days is generally deciding what types of developments will go in a particular area. But every time somebody comes down and they put feet on the ground and they see cheddars covered up from A to Z, so you can't even get on the parking lot, they can't wait to come here. And but when we place an AutoZone right next to the cheddars, they got to look at us and say, wait a minute, what happened? Because believe me, so many people on our particular page have expressed just shaking their head about what in the world happened there. I contacted planning, and they told me, the developers sued and, had greater control over that. But those things are very, very important to us. And I come here tonight to say, I want this board, and every time you think about, or someone comes before you, to think about. And Mayor Copeland said it best. He wanted McDonough to be the north side of the south side. That's what we want. We want to be the north side of the south. We want to be the shining star. And the only way that we're going to be able to be the shining star is that we got to be thinking here. We got to think that we can be Dunwoody, or that we can be Sandy Springs, or that we can be Smyrna. But we're a decade behind or more. But like I said, when I stepped into Smyrna, Atlanta Road, as many of you know, that corridor was filled with poverty. Not anybody in Cobb County wanted to be anywhere near that location. We're not that far away from where they were, but they believed it was possible, which is what we have to do. Thank you.
Thank you. We sure do appreciate those comments. And Sherry, I would like to ask a question of staff. That AutoZone that went beside Checkers, that didn't come before us for a rezoning, did it?
No, it didn't. And we've received several calls and comments. As you know, when properties come in, that parcel did come in as a large tract of land. It predates all of us here, except for probably Mr. Risher. The property actually was rezoned as a result of a lawsuit, and it's no secret. The developer sued the county. The courts remanded it back to the Board of Commissioners, and the property was rezoned. one interesting thing about that property is that the zoning on the property is commercial. I think it was PD, and under the PD designation, the developer was afforded the opportunity to develop the property for any C1 or C2 uses. With that said, there were no conditions that were placed that excluded uses. You were here for the case that just went, and that was one thing that this board decided to do, was to exclude certain uses to prevent some of the things that are happening. Granted, we all, and I'm certainly not speaking against any retail use that's here in the county, because we welcome all of them. But certainly we all agreed that compatibility is important. I think it's very clear from everyone that we do need more restaurants in the county. We need them more in our cities. But it starts here. It starts at the planning staff level. It starts at the zoning advisory board level. But then it also starts at the board of commissioners level, because we have to get out and promote Henry County. You're absolutely right. We have a long way to go, but we've come a long way. I mean, there's a lot of things that are going on now in Henry County that we weren't doing 5 or 6 years ago. I think this zoning advisory board has made it very clear we want quality development. We want that in our residential development, and we want that in our commercial development. But again, certainly we couldn't stop the auto zone from going there because it is a commercial use that was permitted under that zoning classification. So I hope I've answered your question, but just also want to add my 10 cents.
Because a lot of people ask me all the time, why do you allow this to happen? I'm like, if it's zoned properly, there's nothing we can do. I mean, our hands are tied. So they don't come before us. And so that was something that I was concerned about. And that's why I would like to see, more corridors with the trees and landscaping and at least raise the bar a little bit. A lot of times the high-end stores, high-end restaurants will not come to an area if the medium average salary or wage is not where it needs to be. And so, unfortunately, a lot of those places won't come to Henry County because of that. But I think that we as zoning board members and the community can demand the way that when stores come up, and we don't want to discourage businesses because that brings us a good tax base and that helps our county, but we can actually make sure it looks nice and is pleasing to everyone that wants to go to a restaurant. It's not just a strip mall or strip stores and there's no trees and things like that and it's all concrete. So I think we hear everyone loud and clear, and we sure do appreciate everyone that's making a difference in our county, and your voices are being heard, and we love it, and just keep it up. So, and we thank staff too. So no further comments from the citizens. We're going to have a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second, all in favor? Let's go home. Thank you.